Welcome to the latest episode of the 5 on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure you check out everything else in our network. Includes 3 yards per carry on the Dolphins and the NFL, 5 rings Canes, of course, on the Hurricanes. Shula Bowl pod, that'll be a happy one this week after the win against Miami for FIU. And, of course, Ballscast, Light Skin Opinions, Fantasy on 5, and everything else. Also, 5reasonsports.com. Make sure you spell it out. New column on there, the Launching Pad weekly column from Nikias Duncan on the Miami Heat, and a new column by Greg Sylvander, his Gut Check column, which comes out every Tuesday. Before we get to today's episode, though, I want to tell you about one of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is AutoNation. If you're looking to buy or sell a vehicle, AutoNation is where you want to go. They're the largest auto retailer from coast to coast, and their friendly and knowledgeable staff here in South Florida will help you save big on a huge selection of new cars, trucks, and SUVs, Toyota, Honda, Chevrolet, Mercedes-Benz, and much, much more. And if you're looking to buy pre-owned, shop AutoNation's huge selection of one-price pre-owned vehicles, all clearly marked with one price, their lowest price guaranteed. Want to get rid of that old car? Turn it into cash today, get a top dollar offer and a check the same day. They'll buy your car with no purchase necessary. Here's the big thing. If you're looking to do any of this stuff, make sure you DM me at 5 Reasons Sports. We've already had a bunch of people who've had a great experience here. What I'm going to do is give your information to an AutoNation senior manager so they can reach out to you directly and walk you through the entire buying process. That's at 5 Reasons Sports. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here after the Miami Heat win again, still undefeated at home, bounced back from the loss in Philadelphia. You know, the world was ending, and then it wasn't because the Charlotte Hornets came to town. Miami continues to beat up on bad teams. The score tonight, 117-100. Led wire to wire pretty much in this game. Well, not quite wire to wire. The first minute was a little dicey. They were down 7-0. And then it was wire to wire from that as soon as they kind of got their footing. Leading scorers tonight, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo with 21 apiece. Kendrick Nunn with 19. Tyler Herro with 18. And Kelly Olynyk with a nice game tonight with 15 points. I'm here with Alex Toledo at the arena. We're back in the press room after coming out of the locker room. And look, we're not going to over-focus on these games against bad teams. You know, the Heat has a big one coming up Wednesday night. We've got a watch party at Duffy's in North Miami Beach for the Heat and the Rockets, the rematch from the Heat blowing the Rockets out here at home a couple of weeks ago. But look, Charlotte's not good. And a lot of these teams the Heat have beaten are not good. But they're blowing out teams they did not blow out last season, and that's significant. And they're winning at home, which is something they haven't really done the past 2 years consistently. If they just won at home in a normal clip last year with how they played on the road, they would have made the playoffs. But, Alex, we're really going to focus on, I think, 2 things today. And one is the rookies and whether or not they can get this kind of play on the road against better teams, because I think that's an issue if you look at some of the splits. And the second thing we're going to focus on is Bam VP. We got a new T-shirt on our website, which Bam Adebayo loves, so we're going to get him one in XL. I promised him. Bam Adebayo and kind of how he can counter what Philadelphia did to the Heat the other night, because we saw some of it. So let's start with the rookies. I'm going to get to the numbers in a second. What did you see that you liked from Tyler Herro and Kendrick Nunn tonight?
So I keep feeling better and better about Tyler. I think he's so damn talented as an off-the-ball shooter, and he looks more and more comfortable with every game that he plays out there. I think it helps, especially with some of those bench lineups he has out there where he's not the only shooter. In fact, they've been throwing out lineups out there with him, Goran, Duncan, Kelly, right? You have multiple plus very good shooters, and it's helped him a lot too because, you know, everybody's at the three-point line, right? The whole defense is guarding the three-point line. And I think Herro and Nunn have been impressive, man. They've been very good at home, but it's going to be tough, like you said, going forward, trying to project how well they perform on the road and whether those shots are going to fall. They've been very dependent on that.
Yeah, so let's get to Nunn now, and then I will get to some of those numbers. I've said repeatedly that Kendrick Nunn is going to feast against bad teams, and that is pretty much what has happened every single time they've faced a bad team. And the reason I think that happens is because And even Bam said this tonight. He was talking to you. It was you or Manny, I think maybe Manny after the game, about how teams have blitzed Kendrick. They've played him a little bit differently. They've put him in a position to make him choose whether to pass or shoot. His instinct is to shoot, not to make a play for somebody else. And so clearly that's on the scouting report. But the reason that I think he'll do better against bad teams is that bad teams can't be that fixated on the scouting report. They have enough other issues, and they're not in position to kind of take away what you do well. And so, Nunn, every game against a bad team, he's been terrific. But I put up some of the numbers tonight, and the splits are pretty dramatic. Coming into this game, Kendrick was averaging about 18 in the wins, and roughly 13 in the losses. But the difference in shooting percentage was roughly 52% versus 39%. So pretty drastic split. Now some of this is chicken or the egg. I was talking to Cooper Moorhead about this, and some of it's chicken or the egg, right? Because if you lose a game, sometimes it's because guys don't shoot well, right? So it's hard to say that these guys not shooting well is why they end up losing the game, right? So it works both ways, basically. You don't really know what comes first, but it's probably a little bit of both. And the reality is the 4 losses for the Heat this year, 3 of them were against really good teams, right? Philadelphia, Denver, and the Lakers. And 1 against a team that's been better than expected in Minnesota. And so Herro's stats are roughly the same as Nunn's. Maybe not quite as high on the high end, but again, he was averaging over 16 points a game in the wins and under 10 points in the losses. And again, plus 50% in the wins, under 40% in the losses. Now, some of that is natural for rookies, but it is something to monitor going forward because in the playoffs, they're not going to play these bad teams. And that raises the question, how do Herro and Nunn replicate these kind of performances, right? Against a Charlotte where you see tonight, Nunn 7 of 10 from the floor for 19 points, a +8. Herro ended up being just a +2, but 18 points on 6 of 13 shooting, 4 for 4 from the line, 2 of 7 from 3. So you get 37 points out of these two guys, and collectively they shoot 13 to 23. So plus, on the plus side of 50%. How do you get this when you get into the playoffs and there's no more garbage to face, even in the East? You're still going to see an Indiana, a Toronto, a Boston, a Philadelphia, a Milwaukee. There are enough good teams.
So it's funny that you mentioned Cooper Moorhead because I was also talking to him tonight, and I was asking him how he feels about countering some of the stuff that the Sixers were doing with Bam, where they were sagging off of him and kind of playing the pass because Bam is looking to pass almost every time that he initiates from the high post, right? And one of the things that we got to talking about was how to get more guys involved to help Bam with that initiation, like maybe getting Nunn or Herro or Duncan running around Bam when he's up there in the high post so that they don't leave him on an island to initiate. And I think that's how you get some of those guys going because, like you said, I think Nunn is a great scorer. He's he's cold-blooded. I do believe the shot is real. I don't think that's something that's going to go away. It won't be as proficient on the road because that's what happens to shooters. But if they do some more of those actions where they get guys going off the move, I think that's how you maximize them. Because we saw again with Herro tonight, he looks great when there's an action that sets him up to then take advantage of, not when he's initiating or when he's the one dribbling trying to create for others. And I think the same goes for Kendrick Nunn. They're different players, but some of those stuff are similar. So like, for example, you try to get Bam initiating, they have these sets where Robinson is cutting across the floor and another shooter like Herro is coming around the 3. I think those are the types of things you need to do, and I think that's why Spo has relied so heavily on it so far, because those guys are not guys who can create for themselves in the way that Jimmy can. And it's also something that's been necessary because Justice has been out. So Jimmy has served as the playmaker to get these guys going, because I think he realizes that their offense runs through them getting in rhythm, because he can get to a shot pretty much whenever he wants.
All right, so let's go through some of this with Herro and Nunn, and I'm going to go rapid fire with you on this. All right, Kendrick Nunn is 5 years older than Tyler Herro. I think sometimes we forget that. In fact, talking to Bam tonight, he was joking that he's actually younger than Kendrick Nunn, but he feels like a veteran compared to Kendrick Nunn because Bam is in his third year in the NBA and Kendrick Nunn is in his first, right? So we forget sometimes Kendrick is 24. Tyler Herro is 19. That's a whole college career and a half these days, or even three college careers difference between the two of them, right? So it's a totally different deal. And I talked to PJ Washington tonight, who was Tyler Herro's teammate in Kentucky. He says none of this surprises him because Tyler was precocious from the first minute he got to Kentucky and believed he was the best player on the team. And that's the way that that's his attitude. attitude. That's how he performs at this level. Let's do some of this stuff rapid fire right now. Long range shooter, who is better at this stage? Herro, Nunn.
I would still say Herro. I think Herro's touch is still superior. I think he can pretty much get to it like we spoke about earlier, right? He has elite balance. Like, he's great at getting in rhythm with his feet first. He has a quick stroke. He has a high arc. The touch is so smooth. I think, he's not perfect, but he's already been an elite shooter off the dribble and off the ball. Whereas Nunn has been a great shooter as well. He's actually been better than I thought he would be off the ball. But I think that has more to do with the fact that there's always another elite shooter out there when he's hitting these shots, right? Jimmy is the one playmaking when he's out there in that starting lineup with him and Duncan and Jimmy, right? And there's always two other shooters between Duncan and Myers Leonard out there, and that makes it easier for Kendrick Nunn to get a good look after Jimmy playmakes. So I think Kendrick Nunn is a very good shooter, but Herro's got the touch and the advantage there.
Mid-range.
Mid-range, it's got to be. I think it's obviously Herro. Herro looks extremely comfortable from mid-range. The shot just goes up even easier because he doesn't have to put as much legs into it, and it looks smooth every time. I think he likes it a lot too. He likes kind of faking off the three if they're closing out on him hard and then going for that mid-range shot, or if they're playing him there too, going in and kind of taking that floater, which is another similarity between him and Kendrick Nunn. So yeah, I do think they are kind of similar.
At the rim.
See, that one's tough. I would probably have to say Kendrick Nunn, but I do think they're both a little bit subpar in that area because Kendrick Nunn's inside game is pretty much those floaters, right? And I think he's been better at those floaters than Herro has been so far. But Herro is a little bit better at making the reads. Like, he's good at attacking the basket in timely situations. But the length or the lack thereof with Herro and the fact that he can't really blow by guys takes away some of that. So he's not, as good as he should be in that aspect.
All right, playmaking and passing.
That's another one, man. I gotta say, I think it's Herro. Like, I don't know what it is. I felt like I was saying that Kendrick Nunn was the better player in the beginning, but I keep seeing Herro and all these things. I think Herro's probably got, more talent than Nunn does. Maybe people feel otherwise, but yeah, man, like he's pretty damn good at making those reads, whether it's finding guys inside or finding the shooters. I think he's really good at shifting the defense. And I don't think Nunn really has that in him. I think Nunn is probably a better overall scorer, even though that kind of goes against everything I've been saying at the moment. But Herro is the one more talent, and I think he's going to be the one that when he puts it all together is going to be the better player.
All right, final one, defense.
That's another one, right? It's like Herro has a little bit more size than Nunn, and he's a little bit better at knowing where to be off the ball. He's been kind of surprising there. Whereas Nunn is very good at I think, as an on-ball defender, if he's guarding some of these, dynamic point guards, like, I don't mind that at all. But once they start putting him in those off-the-ball actions, it gets really tough for him. He's always getting, completely shut down by these big guys who run these screens, and all of a sudden he's playing catch-up, right? He's playing from behind.
All right, so you're putting all this stuff together, and for the most part, you're saying Tyler. I think we both agree that Tyler has more upside. Again, he's 5 years younger, and there's definitely more upside with Tyler Herro. But the question is right now, right? So you and I are having this discussion. I don't want to do a ton of rotation lineup talk on this one because we've done a lot of it, and we'll do more of it. But we're waiting for Justice Winslow to come back. Spoelstra said when I asked today that Justice is expected to practice on Tuesday. We'll see if he's cleared. And if he's cleared and he practices, he's likely going to play in Houston on Wednesday. It means he could go back in the starting lineup or they could wait. If you're going to make a starting lineup change, though, and you're planning on making another one, it makes sense to make them at the same time. I wouldn't be stunned. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I wouldn't be stunned if maybe Tyler Herro finds his way back in the starting lineup with Justice Winslow. Like, we've talked a lot about who starts Justice or Duncan or Nunn, which two of those three. I think we got to throw Tyler Herro in the mix because if they're envisioning Tyler being a starter next to Justice long term, having Justice out, rather than have to make two changes, maybe you make two changes at once instead of making one change twice, right? And so it might be a little bit easier to do that. So something to monitor. If it happens on Wednesday, certainly we're going to talk about it. All right, we're going to get to Bam Adebayo here in a second. I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is the new Gold Club in Pompano Beach. That's right, Pompano Beach. This is not just a gentleman's club. It's for ladies as well. How do we know? Because women are never charged there. They can go there for free whenever whenever they want. They just open their kitchen, so they've got a full menu there as well. They've also got $5 You Call It Monday, so you show up on Monday, $5, they'll fill your glass with whatever it is that you want. And here's the big deal here. By the way, they're open from 11 to 2 a.m. every day. The big deal is we're having a watch party there. Now, we're having a watch party first, as I mentioned, for Heat Rockets at Duffy's in North Miami Beach on 27th of November. Is coming up this Wednesday. But the following Wednesday, we're going to have a watch party at the Gold Club for Heat Celtics. So we picked 2 really winnable games there. We'll see what happens on the road. But we're going to be podcasting live from the Gold Club. And again, some of the men who listen to this podcast, bring your wife, bring your girlfriend, bring both. Whatever it is you want to do, come to the new Gold Club. Alf and I and Alex are going to be on stage. All right. Before we get to the next part of this podcast, it's not often that Alex asks a question and he's not dunked on. So he asked a question here in the postgame of Eric Spoelstra about Bam Adebayo. We're going to play 2 clips for you. First, Eric Spoelstra talking about Bam Adebayo, and then Jimmy Butler talking about Bam Adebayo.
Tonight for Bam, he's did a little bit of everything, great rebounding game. How do you feel about his next step where he's shown these flashes of doing stuff off the ball, taking the center off the dribble like he did tonight and went in and slammed it? How do you feel in that aspect?
Yeah, he's been doing that for 16 months, but it's just it takes a while, for him to get comfortable using it during the course of the game. And he's doing it within the context of our offense and flow. He's not going out of his way to try to go in the bag and prove to people out there that he has to score. He's just playing winning basketball, but he works at his player development every single day, and you can see his footwork is getting better, his handle in traffic is getting better. When he's a threat, obviously that makes the rest of our offense better because he's such an improved passer as well.
Veteran guys are trying to let the young guys know what they can be at times, and we see tonight with Bam shooting the jumper, driving to the basket, things we know he has in his game but he doesn't show all the time. How much have you been on him to kind of bring that stuff out?
I don't tell him to do anything. He knows what he's capable of, and he has the freedom to do whatever he wants to do on offense because he's one of our best defenders. He's always letting his toughness and his competitive drive dictate what he does on offense. He's always going to compete, so we love him for that. I mean, he's, like I said before, he's the heart of this thing. He's the engine that keeps us rolling. Everybody follows suit when it comes to that guy because he just plays so hard. And he's, one of the better bigs in the league because he does everything so well.
All right, so that's Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler talking about Bam Adebayo. We want to talk about Bam tonight, not so much because of what he did tonight, which was 21 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, a block, 8 of 14 from the field, and 5 from 5 from the line, which is a real positive. He and Jimmy Butler were 14 of 14 from the line. If that happens, they're going to win a lot of games. But it's not so much for what he did tonight as what he didn't do against Philadelphia. And that is, against Philadelphia, they played him differently than other teams have played him. They backed off of him and basically decided if he wants to pass, he can pass. But if he's not going to make the other plays, if he's not going to prove to us he's going to take that 15-foot jumper, if he's not going to prove to us that he's going to put the ball on the deck, then, we'll live with him as a playmaker there. And it took away, and you saw what happened because the assist numbers were way down for them. Tonight, again, not a great opponent, not a lot of resistance, but it reminded me a little bit of what we used to ask of Chris Bosh. And Chris was there tonight, and you put some video on Twitter of him too, having a good time. But a lot of times with Chris, we would see Chris put the ball on the deck and get to the basket and flush it. I'd be like, why the hell doesn't he do that all the time? Like, he's capable of doing that. And it did. Now, he would take the jumper, but he would also drive to the basket on occasion. Be like, he has enough athleticism to do that. He has enough versatility to do that. And he has enough power to do that at the end of it. Now, Bam, in some ways, is a more powerful player than Chris is, but he has some of those same. He's springy in the same way that Chris was, and he's smart. He's intelligent, and he can read things. Not to the same degree that Chris Bosh could at 32, but pretty good for a 22-year-old. What did you see tonight from Bam that you liked, and what is sustainable against better competition, when he starts to go against, again, you're going against maybe not a Brook Lopez, but some of the better bigs in the Eastern Conference?
So I do appreciate what Bam's been doing. He has been absolutely a part of everything they do on both ends, right? On offense, they've been using him as a screener, an initiator, a release valve, as a lob threat, as a guy who, can sink an open mid-range shot if they're giving it to him. But you're right. Against the Sixers, he looked a little bit weaker. He didn't have a terrible game, but it was a little bit like it exposed him a little bit, not in the sense that it was a weakness of his, but if he's not looking to get his own shot and he's just looking to pass every time, they're going to play that, right? And, there's been Sixers fans that have been snarky on Twitter about, appreciating a 6'10" guy who's a very good passer but who doesn't shoot. They're trying to, compare Ben Simmons to Bam, which is funny. But, yes, in the sense that if Bam isn't taking that shot, that's going to be a weakness for them versus the better teams. It's not going to be a weakness versus these lower-end teams because they're not as good as defending that. The Sixers, like we talked about before, present unique problems where they've got length and size at every position. And so even if you do have shooters running around Bam when he's initiating, they can cut that off every time. They can go under and just put their damn arms up because they've got Matisse Thybulle and Josh Richardson and Ben Simmons and all these guys are just going to hound all the shooters that the Heat have been relying on. But Bam's next step is showing... he's shown some of these flashes, right, where he's been able to take guys off the dribble like he did with Cody Zeller tonight. He completely blew by Marvin Williams and went for that jam in the second half. I think that's his next step, right? He has to be more consistent in that, and he's faster than most of the bigs that are matched up against him on any given night. And there's going to be times where if the pass isn't there, just drive right by them. And if at the very least you don't finish, he might get a couple free throw attempts. And I think that's something he's got to do more often, as well as stepping into some of those in-rhythm jumpers where I think he hit one or two of them tonight. I think those two things are, things that are going to have to be incorporated more. He's going to have to become a little bit more of a three-level scorer in order for the Heat to really compete versus some of these teams, especially when you get Justice back, right, and they may not be respecting him as much as they're respecting a Nunn or a Robinson or a Herro when it comes to the three-point shot. Bam and Justice are going to need to take similar steps where they're taking advantage of defenses that are maybe not paying attention to them as much because they're too busy trying to cut off Jimmy and the shooters.
Well, and we talk about, one game and not reading too much into it. Joel Embiid, we were all celebrating him as a player that the Heat couldn't handle, and tonight he went scoreless for Philadelphia. So game-to-game things... Right. But game-to-game things change in the league, and so that's why we said the other night, don't read too much into it, right? Like the Heat rebounded, Philly faced a tougher opponent tonight in Toronto and lost another close game where there's some issues down the stretch. But I think with Bam, a lot of this is just him realizing what he can be. I think a lot of this is him developing that confidence in himself. And again, he was not a top 10 pick. When he came in here, the projection was it was going to take a few years. But if you go back to what they said about him on draft night, they were touting his three-point shot. They were that's the crazy thing when you look.
The video that came out.
The video that came
draft,
right. He was nailing all of them, and Calipari was basically said he didn't have a take. And look, Tyler Herro, Bam Adebayo, Calipari guys, right? They trust him implicitly, and even if you go back to Karl Anthony Towns at Kentucky, like he didn't develop the outside game at Kentucky at all. He was known for his post. He was purely a post player, and then he comes into Minnesota and he's one of the elite bigs in terms of outside of 15 feet in the league.
Probably the best.
Right. So it's you don't do it. It's always the old joke about Michael Jordan. The only guy to ever hold Michael Jordan under 20 points was Dean Smith, his coach.
Yeah.
Because there's college coaches, sometimes they don't bring out, especially now when you only have guys for 1 year, right? So there's parts of Tyler Herro's game. That's why I wanted to talk to P.J. Washington about it, because there's parts of Tyler Herro's game he never got to at Kentucky that you're starting to see now. There are parts of Bam Adebayo's game that Calipari only saw in practice. Now you're in the Heat system, you're in the Heat program, and you're enhancing what he worked on at Kentucky. You have a great working relationship with Calipari in Kentucky, so you knew exactly what you had to build. I tweeted this the other night. I was told the night they drafted Bam Adebayo that they had done more research. I was told this by somebody in their security area. They'd done more research on Bam Adebayo than any player they'd ever drafted. They could not find anybody to say a bad thing about him, and the thing that everybody said consistently was you cannot stop his motor. And that has been consistent. They've been totally correct on that. And I also told everybody what I was told that night was he's the anti-Hassan. okay, by people inside the organization. So that is all proven to be true. They freed him up now to develop other parts of his game. You're laughing, but it's true. Look, this is what people were talking about for 3 years.
I think it's funny that they had to go out and find somebody to be that.
When they had Hassan signed to a max contract. He's the antithesis of our max player. Basically, this is what we're looking for. It's true, though. That's what they were looking for. So look, Bam has only scratched the surface of this. And
it's been very gradual with him, I feel like.
It's been gradual, but at the same time, it's been steady, right? It's been gradual, but there have been parts of his game that you've seen come up. The passing ability you saw from the very beginning. Now, them running everything through him is a different story, but the passing ability you saw. But and you saw a little bit of it out on the break, and you saw the switchability. Like, these are things you saw. But the driving to the basket, the knocking down the 12 to 15-foot jumper, and eventually you expand that. These are all things that are in there for him. And I asked him, I'm not going to play this clip tonight because I'm saving some of this stuff, but I asked him tonight about the relationship with Jimmy. And he said basically Jimmy didn't come in here pretending or acting like he was the star. He acted like we were partners. And that relationship, the relationship between your best big and your star perimeter player, is a critical relationship. Look no further than Minnesota and what happened between Jimmy and Karl Anthony Towns. Does Bam have the upside of Karl Anthony Towns as an offensive player? Probably not, okay? Very few guys in the NBA have. But can he be a better defender than Karl Anthony Towns? He can, even though Towns is defending at a better clip this year.
I think Bam's already, not only a better defender than Cat, but also I think he's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, at least, through these first 15 games of the season. I think he's been at that level where he is just all over the place on defense, right? He's roaming, been a great rim protector, or good rim protector at the very least, a good rebounder. He can switch onto anybody, and he's great at the closeouts. He's good at all the little details.
He's not just hunting for blocks. He's true. He's just not just hunting for blocks, because when you hunt for blocks, okay, you'll get one block, and you're going to give up 2 weak side baskets while you're trying to do it. And this is the stuff that infuriated the Heat. They don't have to deal with it anymore, and I probably should stop comparing them because it's really not productive. But anyway, Adebayo tonight, 21-13-5, had the 3 turnovers, but had a block, 8 of 14 from the field, a plus 16. Jimmy Butler tonight, plus 29. They were plus 17 for the game, plus 20. Jimmy Butler basically dominated a game while taking 11 shots. We've seen this consistently, and we're getting to the point where we're kind of taking him for granted.
See, I do want to say something about that, though. I think that's something that they can only get away with versus some of these lesser teams. Maybe not versus the worst teams. I do think they can get away with it versus decent teams. But Jimmy, taking 10, 11 shots a game versus very good teams is something I don't think they're going to be able to get away with, which is why I think, again, Justice coming back going to help them a lot, not only on defense, but on offense, where, maybe Justice takes hold of these playmaking duties that Jimmy has had so far, and let Jimmy focus on, picking his spots as a scorer. And he's still going to do playmaking, but maybe he's not going to be the point forward that he's been this whole time. And I think they're going to need Jimmy to be their best scorer on a night-to-night basis, especially when you're getting to the end of the season and into the playoffs.
I want to see Jimmy in the post more. I just every time he gets in the post, he's got a mismatch. Every time he identifies a switch, they always get good action out of it. Whether it's him directly to the basket or whether it's somebody cutting, something good happens when Jimmy gets in the post.
And the thing is, they're getting those switches all the time, right? And even if, for example, tonight, I remember one possession where Devontae Graham was switched onto him, and Jimmy, was backing him down from 12, 13 feet, and it's just there's no chance, right? And from there, if they're not sending help or doubling, that's an easy bucket for him. If they do send help, he's going to find the open shooter, which is why I think the system that Spo has implemented this whole time works for right now. But he's got to take advantage of, the mismatches coming, down the road as a scorer.
Well, and when they start going against teams that have a lot of these teams are out west, but you're going against a team with Kawhi and Paul George. You're going against, we'll see it a little bit with Westbrook and Harden on Wednesday night, but even some of what Boston's developed so far with Kemba and some of the wings that they have. Sometimes your best scorer needs to be your best scorer. I agree with you on that. But you're right. At games like this is a game where you preserve yourself a little bit. He played 31 minutes. He wasn't really taxed. They only had 9 guys tonight available because everybody else is sick. But they were able to play between 14 minutes for Chris Silva, up through 34 for Adebayo, so nobody got pushed too much. All right, one more sponsor before we let you go, and then I want to tell you something else about a watch party. Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm, go to onecalllegal.com. That's onecalllegal.com. Someone there 24 hours a day to handle virtually any kind of case that you could have all over the state. They're based in North Miami. They handle immigration, but they also handle traffic tickets, personal injury, and so much more. So onecalllegal.com. That's a Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. And again, watch parties Wednesday night and Wednesday night. This Wednesday night against the Rockets at Duffy's. We're giving away T-shirts. I found some 5 Reasons hats in the bottom of a box, so we got some 5 Reasons hats to give away as well. We've got like 8 Heat T-shirts at this point that you might want. Also Dolphins T-shirt, and then our University of Coral Gables T-shirts that the FIU fans are starting to buy up a little bit after beating University of Miami. And then the next week, as I mentioned, at Gold Club on the 4th of, this is going to be the 4th of December for the Heat and the Celtics. Both watch parties start at 7 o'clock. Games start at 8 o'clock. Talk to you soon.